My name is Barry Long. I teach man and woman how to be true to love and how to be honest in their relationships. I help them to discover a divine love beyond all sexual imagining. The key to the mystery of divine love is to see love as it is, and not as you think you know it or like to imagine it. These tapes are for partners who yearn to reach the truth of love in themselves and each other. By listening attentively to what I have to say, and then practicing it patiently and steadfastly over the months ahead, you and your partner can discover a more real, a more divine love. It is not easy to get it right, and sometimes you may even feel it's a hopeless task. But listening to these tapes, you will always be reminded that your love has purpose. Without purpose, love is hopeless, as you already know, or you would not be listening now. As you can see in the world around you, love on this planet is in a dreadful mess. But in these tapes, I'm going to show you the purpose of love and your individual place in love or life on earth. The cause of most of the unhappiness on earth is that man and woman have actually forgotten how to make physical love. This is the greatest tragedy of all time. The forgetfulness has been going on and slowly getting worse for so many thousands of years that it's now a tragedy for the whole of mankind. This means that only the individual man or woman has any chance of starting to correct it. There can be no mass solutions. The problem is too personal and too deep. Everybody has to do it for himself or herself, or it can't be done. I shall be telling you how to get your physical love-making right. I shall be speaking very intimately to you. I suggest you play both tapes over and over. Each time you will have new insights into love. Woman's basic unhappiness, her perennial discontent, is because man can no longer reach her physically. Her emotional excess, depressions, tearful frustration, even premenstrual tension, and the conditions leading to hysterectomy and other uterine problems are due to man's sexual failure to gather or release in lovemaking her finest, fundamental female energies. These extraordinarily beautiful divine energies are intense and exquisite, and when left untapped in woman, as they are now, they degenerate into psychic or emotional disturbances and eventually crystallize into physical abnormalities. The womb gives birth to all things. Man's basic unhappiness, his perennial restlessness, is because, in forgetting how to make love, he's abandoned his original divine authority and lost sexual control of himself. His emotional or psychic degeneracy manifests as sex obsession. All men, without exception, are sex-obsessed. This means compulsive sexual fantasizing, chronic masturbation, even when living with a partner, sex repression leading to anger and violence, and the universal symptoms of chasing wealth and getting lost in work. Busyness and wealth gathering compensate for being an inept lover and are cover-ups, in both sexes, for the inability or fear to love. Because of his neglect of love, neglect of woman, man suffers from premature ejaculation, guilt, anxiety, self-doubt, impotence, sexual atrophy masquerading as sexual disinterest, sexual abstinence due to repressed fear or failure, sexual bravado and lack of true wisdom, all of which he inflicts on woman, aggravating her basic discontent and his own restlessness. No matter how much a woman loves her man and wants to give her love to him, she will not and cannot give up all her divine energies if he is not yet himself fully integrated or aligned with love. As very few men are themselves, the gap of unhappiness between man and woman keeps on growing. To be a fully integrated male, A man has to assimilate in his body the divine female energies that woman can only release to him through right physical lovemaking. But the man has to be man enough. He has to be able to love her enough. That is, love her divinely or selflessly during the actual act of lovemaking. He has to be able to absorb and express sufficient love in his body to reach the highest part of her, and love enough to extract the divine energies from her deepest centre. To be able to love woman in this way is the authority man has lost, his only true authority over woman. This requires pure love. It does not depend on technique. A man may develop his sexual technique, but he cannot use expertise to make divine love. Exciting sensations and orgasms are gratifying and give him a form of authority, but they are not the love that woman craves. He may satisfy her like a good meal, but soon she hungers again, and eventually despises her appetite or herself because she knows she is not being loved. Man has failed to serve love and failed physically to serve woman, who is the personification of love. The penalty for man is woman's tyrannous emotionality. Wherever he loves, or tries to love, she will one day shock him, stun him, devastate him by suddenly revealing herself as the fiendness, the living female demon of emotion. The fiendess shows herself when he is attached and just can't walk away. A man who has not yet experienced the hatred of the fiendess has not yet experienced love. A woman who has not yet seen herself being the fiendess has not yet connected with her love. To man, the fiendess of emotion in woman is hell on earth. This is the part of her he cannot handle or understand. The demon of his own failure to love comes to life to scorn, abuse, and torment him. He is terrified of it. He bluffs and blusters his way through. But finally, as he grows old in the relationship and gives up for the sake of some peace, the fiendess will conquer him and force him to surrender the last vestige of his manliness and authority. Then they both grow old together, feeling safe, but half dead as they lean on each other in the awful world of compromise. While the world continues as it is, the fiendess will not allow man to forget his failure to love woman rightly. Woman must be loved. The future of the human race depends on woman being loved, because only when woman is truly loved can man truly be himself and regain his lost authority. Only then can peace return to earth. Yet woman, as she is now, cannot be loved for long, or for good, by man as he is now. Together they are trapped in a vicious circle, and if left to their own ideas of love, there is no way out for them. At the beginning of time, when the world had just begun, the state of man and woman was very different. The beginning of time and the world is relatively recent compared with the beginning of the universe or the earth. The earth is not the world. The world was built by man. The world began about 12,000 years ago, when man identified for the first time with physical death. At this point, time began, providing the sense of tomorrow and continuity on which the world is built. Before this there was only past, extending back to the first life forms. And before life on earth, there was neither time nor past. There was only the present or the timeless. Time is not a process of things getting better. Time is the process of things getting worse. And things have got a lot worse for man and woman and their love since they started to slip into time and self-forgetfulness around 10,000 BC. You might say this sounds like myth. It is myth, but not myth as fable or fiction. What I am going to describe is the truth. True myth is the only means we have left of communicating the truth, the original state of man and woman on earth. So please be as still and receptive as you can. Suspend your critical mind and listen while I outline for you the myth or truth of man and woman, your own original state, which you are striving to regain by loving and living in time today. Around 12,000 years ago, the individual bodies of man and woman were permanently surrounded by a magnificent golden orb or halo. Radiating out from the solar plexus, it extended visibly above the head, into the ground and beyond the reach of the outstretched arms. The woman's orb was a slightly deeper gold than the man's, but both had the same dazzling, sublime and beauteous quality. Woman was pure love, the serene, passive pole of human spiritual love on earth. Man, the active and positive pole, was also love, but not pure love in the same sense. His love was a pure authority, the masculine principle which was the guardian of love or woman on earth. He or his love was responsible for maintaining the golden divine quality of love between man and woman. The brilliance of their orbs or halos at any time reflected the intensity and purity of that love. Their physical lovemaking was ecstatic. The divine energy generated was so powerful that after making love their radiant bodies or halos blazed with incredible splendor. This self-luminous radiance of spirit or love, created in each by physical union, was the manifestation of their Godhead on earth. For man and woman at the beginning of time were gods, and they sustained the awareness and presence of their Godhead, their timelessness, by making divine physical love. The halo, the golden energy, was their means of communication, whether together or apart. Its range went far beyond the visible outline, and through it each was in constant undisturbed touch with the other, in silence and stillness, in mutual consciousness of pure love, God. When either halo needed new energy, man and woman would draw together and make love, make God. As the only two conscious physical poles of love on earth, they would illuminate and energize themselves. He would regenerate her love, while she would restore his love and authority. Communication between them was so complete there was no need for speech. Speaking developed with time. It developed when men and women started to forget to love, and began to lose themselves in time given to other things, to building the world. Thus men and women forgot how to be themselves all the time, and as they failed to make divine physical love, their halos, their consciousness, lost the golden God connection. They had to start talking across the developing gap between them. And then in the distance of speech arose misunderstanding and emotion. As time or lovelessness invaded the bodies of man and woman, speech replaced the immediacy and fullness of love. Vocabulary grew and grew. Instead of being love, they declared, "I love you," and there developed many wordy substitutes for love. The intensity of the halo was retained in some individuals longer than others, but with time or the past increasing in everybody, things got inexorably worse. In a few thousand years, most men and women had completely forgotten how to make love and to be love. Although apparently performing the same physical act, they were unable to release or generate divine energy, or personify in themselves the living spirit or presence of love, the timeless. Their bodies, no longer aligned in love, were aligned in time and emotion. Instead of making pure love, they made emotional, demanding love. And instead of producing spiritually enlightened children, they produced emotionally dependent ones. Woman was now confused and perennially discontented. Man, having lost his authority, was now impatient with her, and in trying to find a substitute for his authority, he became perennially busy and restless. Lacking the authority to control her, he used his superior physical and economic strength to force her into an inferior social position, particularly by exploiting her love of her young. This so enraged her that it engendered the fiendness, who as long as time continued would never forget or forgive his injustice and corruption of love. The human race, the race into time, had begun. A few men and women retained some ability to love divinely within themselves by deliberately not making physical love. These were the mystics, saints, and ascetics. They turned their attention inward and loved the divine energies in their own bodies. By refusing to mate with other bodies, now filling with time and emotion in the form of discontent and restlessness, they kept themselves relatively pure. But it was a pale and lopsided purity, measured against the full, rich, original radiance. Denying the earthly need of union with the opposite sex, the saintly alternative was fundamentally exclusive, unnatural, and selfish, despite its lofty devotion and idealism. Consequently, it produced half-integrated and only partly divine men and women. Things were getting unmistakably worse. The result was reflected in the orbs and halos, which had gradually shrunk in size and illumination to a small circle of light around the head. You see this today depicted in old paintings and icons, particularly of Christian saints. These shrunken miniature halos show just how restricted and formalized man's idea of love on earth had become. By excluding the whole of his or her body from divine union with the opposite sex, and grounding love solely in the abstraction of the mind, the halo was reduced to circle the head alone, or at best the upper part of the body. The adoption of celibacy by the mystics was a great tragedy for mankind. Mystics and saints just might have saved the day, or the world, had they acted more selflessly. It could be said that due to the inrush of time they had no choice. At least in their way, they managed to keep some pure divine love on earth, until sainthood itself all but disappeared under the weight of time. But the truth is that they didn't love enough. They didn't love their fellow man and woman with sufficient golden intensity to dip into the divine mind in their own bodies through intercourse. Making love to give guidance or an inspired example was too much of a self-sacrifice. Despite their divine love, and swamped by time like the rest of mankind, the mystics and saints had completely forgotten how to make physical love. But they didn't realize it, and they were very emotional about it. They even made a virtue of their forgetfulness. This is particularly evident by the time the Christian Church appears. In their relentless passion, perplexed and ridden by guilt, Christian saints denounced physical lovemaking. Like the mob that screamed, "Crucify him!" they condemned the love they feared and did not understand. Or they remained aloof. Although compassionate and mindful of the peripheral sufferings of mankind, the poverty, disease and violence, they always dodged the central issue of physical love, the cause of most of the unhappiness on earth, including their own. Even Jesus, if we are to believe his priests, avoided the issue completely and left not one word of guidance for men and women whose tireless preoccupation, now as then, is the attempt to make physical love. Because of the glaring omission of sexuality from his teachings, the Messiah has a lot to answer for, if you believe his priests and interpreters. Saintly men and women have burdened everyone in the West with their own awful guilt, and the notion that making physical love is a sin to burn in hell for. How many billions of innocent boys and girls, and men and women, have suffered the hell on earth of sexual guilt, and still do, because of the Christian saints' lack of courage to love? God make me celibate, but not today, prayed St. Augustine. Why didn't he ask God to show him why he loved woman so much that he couldn't stay away from her, instead of praying for an intellectual ideal that just wasn't true? So the Christians, their saints, and all the celibate monks, ascetics, and devotees of all religions who turned away from physical love tried to keep their hands clean out of the real muck of love where ordinary men and women have to live. God is enough, they said. But is that true if you're not a saint? Is it true for you? Or do you long to make love, and perhaps sense something divine, pure and godly in making love, which you know must be there and must be found? Love is needed here on earth, and it starts between you and me, man and woman. We cannot opt out of the reality of love on earth and put love in some other place, some heaven. Love is not needed by God, who in that place is the source of love. If you want to escape to God in your love and leave man and woman behind, then God help you. You will never be complete. Man and woman need the God of love in the thick of it here on earth, not somewhere else where it already is and they are not. Only you and I together can make that love, that God, here. It is the lack of love or lack of God between us that has brought the world today to the brink of annihilation by its own hand. Where is the origin of all love on earth, even the love of God, if not in making love? For is not everyone, even the otherworldly saint, born of lovemaking? Is it intelligent to ignore the possibility that the sweetest natural physical sensation two human beings can produce together on earth signifies a reality? Isn't that the obvious place to start looking for a divine love? Have you been told to love God? No one on earth can possibly love God by an act of his or her own will. How can you love if you don't love? What would you say if I said, feel hungry, when you weren't hungry? Or perhaps you've been told to love everybody. How can you love everybody? Can you possibly do it, really? Is everybody so lovable? Do you really love your enemies? Did you tell your children today, not last Christmas, to love those who beat or bully them? Today, when someone crosses you, see if you love him. Let's be straight. Let's be honest with ourselves. We would all love to love everyone. But could we please just start with our partner? Perhaps you say, love everyone in spite of the natural tendency to be unloving. That's the task. There is no task, no duty, no hardship in love. To try to love as a task is to follow the shameful, guilt-ridden, otherworldly way. That is not the way to love. You start to love by making love, which is what you and everyone else on earth most want to do anyway. But you must learn how to make love rightly, that is, without self-indulgence, without seeking emotional satisfaction and self-gratification. Breaking the sexual habits and appetites of a lifetime will take some time and a lot of love. It will not be easy, but you will know by the feeling of rightness that you are on the way back to a more real, more fulfilling love. Eventually, after you have learned to make true physical love and have started to restore your golden halo, you'll find you have discovered how to love your fellow man, how to love your enemies, how to love yourself, and how to love God. Woman has learned to make love through man who does not know how to make love. Hence the dreadful mess that love is in. Since time began, she has been manipulated and encouraged to feel that the finest expression of her love is to please man sexually. The truth is the other way round. The finest expression of love is to have man delight her sexually. This he can only do when he can forget his preoccupation with orgasm and excitement, and be sufficiently selfless or present in love to collect and receive her divine energies. For him, these are the finest expression of her love. By teaching her to please him and satisfy him down through the ages, man has taught woman to desire him, to project herself sexually, to make herself attractive to him. He addicted her to an emotional and physical craving for his sexual attention, and he did this by neglecting to love her. Woman had no affirmation of love, her true nature, since there was no man to love her rightly. So she settled for sexual excitation, which men had persuaded her was love. Men addicted her to this by teaching her that there is no purpose to physical love outside of making babies or selfish pleasure. Man in his selfishness taught woman to be selfish. He taught her to excite him physically whenever love was not present, to project herself sexually for their mutual entertainment through clothing, makeup, dance and posing. And he encouraged her to let him excite her and himself through digital stimulation of her clitoris to the point of orgasm, instead of loving the beauty of her whole body. The loveless narcotic of sex numbed her, and like all addictions, engendered fear. Fear of losing him or his attention, and fear of other women in the form of jealousy and female competition. If she didn't satisfy him, another woman soon would. And with this went the intimidating thought sown in her by all her sexual partners that if she didn't comply, she'd be left all alone. As a reaction to this male infamy, woman discovered cunt power, the power to tease man and manipulate him without delivering the goods, or by denying the goods when he wanted them. But the spell of cunt power, being largely imaginary, soon wore off after she let him enter her body. He would soon tire of her and go off with another woman. Woman's subconscious dependence on the fluctuating sexual attention of men rules her choice of partner. She may go for either an exciting man whom she thinks she can control, or an agreeable and safe partner whom she can quietly bend to her wants. Both kinds of partnership usually end either in disaster or boredom and indifference. Male sexuality is put into woman in sexual intercourse, and because it is substantive, it stays on in her. Its effect is a periodic, wispy shadow of depression that she can't explain, but accepts as normal. It clouds her perception, making her feel emotional and not herself. The same male sexuality is the active, outgoing, selfish drive which made the world a violent and loveless place. In woman, this destructive shadow of man subtly influences her choice of a partner. So very seldom is he Mr. Right. The male shadow in her is doubt, and it is the shadow that chooses. While woman wants the right to choose, she has to make a choice, and then she must live with the shadow, doubt, in the man and in herself. Woman in her natural state is not dependent on man. She loves him, and in love there is no dependence, no attachment, and no fear of losing. She is the passive attracting principle. She is an irresistible living magnet. She draws to herself a right man to love her truly and divinely. There's no choice in it. For woman today to return to her natural golden state takes time. But having suffered enough from man's sexuality, she gradually learns not to compromise where there is not enough love. Finally, this brings her a man who can remove the shadow from his love. A woman is only ever less than her true nature because of man's lack of love. She went off into her dream to escape his sexuality. Her babies have long been a substitute for his love. Unlike man, a real woman can exist without sexual intercourse or masturbation. She waits for love, not sex. Woman only lusts for man when she identifies with the male sexuality he has induced in her. Nymphomania is a male invention and fantasy projection, like sex shops, pornography and prostitution, all kept going by male sexuality and lack of love in all concerned. Woman has been utterly fooled by man, pathologically brainwashed. And as modern woman congratulates herself on her progress in breaking down male domination in the world, she fails to perceive that she is as firmly hooked as ever on his orgasmic sexuality and his clitoral substitute for love. Her protests are really about love, not equality, but that's not heard in the strident male arena. It is man's world, and he built it on the strength of sexual aggression. Male domination began in sex, and in sex it continues unabated. Woman cannot alter this position by marching with banners or withdrawing from sex. She has tried all the means at her disposal down through the centuries. None has worked, and none will. The solution is now beyond the scope of any personal or social action. Only consciousness beyond the person or divine action can help. Let me ask you, woman, have you really any idea how to free yourself from male sexual domination? How to bring real love back into your life? Any idea how you and your partner can learn to make real love? To truly make love tangible so that you can actually create love together and build on it as long as you are both together? Have you? If you have an answer, please say it. Say it now out loud or to someone else, before I tell you. Or before you're tempted after I speak to say you knew it all along. Well, whatever your answer, I ask you to give it up. To find love, you have to abandon all your preconceptions. The only way to love is to be available to the new now. Addressing both man and woman, if you are going to bring love into your sexual life, you are going to need new energy. That energy starts with honesty. Honesty to yourself and honesty to life. Here are 3 things you can do to gather the necessary energy. Listen to yourself admit that your love life is not good enough. You must express this. Say it aloud. Hear it so that there is no hiding, no psychological escaping. It's not enough just to know it inside. That's how love dies between lovers. They think it's enough to know they love inside and not to say it anymore. When it's too late, they sob and scream their love. But the door's already slammed, the house empty. Say it now so that your whole being hears it. Our lovemaking is not good enough. Next, admit to yourself that you don't know what to do about the problem, that you are powerless. See that all you can do is repeat the same old actions that men and women in their desperation and despair have taken unsuccessfully since they first fell in love and time or emotion started to come between them. Be honest. If you already know the answers, why haven't you acted on them? And if you have the answer, why are you listening to this tape? Finally, admit you can't do it alone, that you need help. For when you give up, when you truly surrender in humility, help is always there within you, and then it can appear outside you. Such honesty and self-knowledge generates passion, the power of love and true commitment in existence. The word passion originally meant suffering, not the suffering of love, but the suffering of self. It's the dissolution or death of self that gives rise to true passion. Self consists of all your past emotional and mental suffering that persists to this day in your subconscious. And the most potent component of self is sexual unhappiness. All the heartbreak, sexual frustration and discontent that you've suffered since your earliest sexual experience. In other words, self is the ignorance and pain of love. Like everything else in existence, self naturally does not want to die. It is sustained by love of self instead of love. However, the time comes for everybody when self must die, like everything. This is the moment for love to come deeper into the body. And as self is dissolved, it is always a painful, traumatic process. True passion is present, as it was in the beginning. To return to the golden state of love in these confused and ignorant times is not easy. But if you have the courage, the honesty, and really desire your freedom, your love, I will guide you into living it. I've spoken about how far man and woman are today from the divine and golden love that is their birthright. Now we are ready to start reclaiming it. I'm going to take you through a number of steps, a program of lessons in lovemaking if you care to call it that, and I ask you to please follow it carefully, putting what is said into practice in your own time over the months and years ahead. This is a process. Every step is the means, not the end. The instruction on these tapes leads you closer and closer to the reality of love. But you can't make it happen quickly or with any will of your own. Love has to be allowed to work in you, as love will. In the beginning and for a good while thereafter, you have much to unlearn and many habits to dismantle. To begin with, there are 4 requirements: commitment, absence of emotion, practice, and perseverance. Both partners must be committed. To make love in this new way, both you and your partner must be committed to take the necessary steps. Both of you should listen to these tapes, and preferably you should listen together, at least in the beginning. Don't think that playing them once or twice is enough. Both of you must be willing to follow the instructions. Adapt them sensibly to your own particular situation when you see the necessity. Do not give up, no matter how hard things get or how often you seem to fail. Keep a sense of greater purpose. You are both engaged in the restoration of divine love on this planet, whatever that may mean to you personally at this time. If you are listening to this but do not have a partner now, it's a preparation for when you do. For you, this is an exercise in seeing the errors you have made in the past. Make love without emotion or imagination. You are going to practice making love without emotion or imagination. The purpose of this is for you to learn to leave it to the 2 bodies, to get your habitual controlling self out of the action. You may not get the idea at the first attempt, or you might. At first the lovemaking may seem strange, even cold. Make love frequently. Make love as often as you can, for only by making love, or endeavouring to, can you make love. The less you make love, the more you grow apart. Don't allow too long a gap. I repeat, make love. Don't make excuses. Put the bodies together and see. Please persevere. There'll be a setback sooner or later as emotion or self comes in. But don't be discouraged. Keep going. Keep loving. If the emotion in either or both of you is too great to allow straightness or love, break off and try again next day. The connection will return, or it will come suddenly and then fade out again as you go through another wave of emotion that separates you. Some of these emotional periods may last several days. During them you may even dislike each other. Lovemaking can seem impossible. Try when you can, though. You can't rid yourself of all the past at once, or even in a few weeks. You actually have to work at it for the rest of your life. All the time you will be making more love, becoming a more loving and conscious man or woman. Next, I'm going to say several things about right conduct and how to be together in straightness and love. Do not be independent. In the lead up to lovemaking and in the lovemaking act itself, have no thoughts or decisions independent of your partner. Everything is to be done together and discussed and observed together as you do it. No long silences. Converse constantly, expressing in words what you are feeling as a bodily sensation. When you feel pleasure, say it. Say, "That's lovely," if it is. Say what you actually feel, not what you think. You're not supposed to be thinking. You're supposed to be being. That means looking inside your body at the sensation, not at what you are thinking. Communicating in words will keep you conscious and present, in front of each other. No promiscuity. Don't spread yourselves around sexually. Conserve the energy of this practice. It is precious. Committed partners are not easy to find. Keep to the one partner once you've found him or her. Partners who are not committed will weaken you and make you lose faith. If you are without a partner, my advice is to wait. Don't go with someone for emotional gratification or sexual satisfaction. Wait until someone comes who has enough love to be with you in the ways I'm revealing. If you meet someone and you enjoy being with each other, be straight right from the start. Tell him or her the truth, that you are endeavouring to love and raise your consciousness through love and honesty. Honest love. Take responsibility. Talk about what it involves. And if you are serious and earnest about loving, you will eventually draw to yourself a person who will share the start of this great adventure with you. If the partnership ends after a while, nothing is really lost. Both of you have gained in love and consciousness, and can be that much more loving and straight next time. Be vulnerable to love. This is most important, especially for women. Don't cut yourself off because you've been hurt in the past. Be brave for love. Turn outward. Love will help you. Don't let fear harden you. The hurt was emotion and lack of love in both of you. It's past. Let it go. Now that you're beginning to understand what making love is about, you have the simple answer to the hurt and the simplest protection against it. That is, only make love where there is enough love to be straight and to be present with each other. Don't fall in love. Be in love. Falling in love is closing your eyes, shutting down your beautiful consciousness, and tripping off into dreamland while you're awake. It's bound to end in disaster because you'll be in imagination. You won't see what's going on. But be in love. Always be in love when you are in love. For to be in love and to keep love fresh and new requires tremendous awareness, tremendous presence. Be in love in this way, and your love will not end, for love has no end. Fall in love, and your love will end. For both of you, the conscious purpose is to reduce the emotionality in yourselves. And the next step is to watch for the moment when the emotion enters and see why you allowed it. I'm going to mention 5 areas of emotionality that may undermine your ability to make love. These are doubt, disinclination, overexcitability, defensiveness, and argument. Agree about when and where you will make love. You should decide together in advance when you are going to make love. Allow ample time. No rush. No avoidable distraction.